example, we've got a car. We use that car for our purposes, going from A to B. The car eventually has a puncture. Our first reaction is a pretty wild one, which is, oh my God, how did that happen? What do I do now? And perhaps we didn't foresee that puncture happening. The reason I probably talked about this metaphor is because situations come, and instead of responding to them in a calm, collective way, I react with irritation, with frustration, with a little bit of raised voice, etc. So what is it that we can do that can make us a little bit less reactive and more responding to situations? Because as you said, change is the only constant here. So how do we handle that change in a calm, collective way?
Now, what happens here is that any reaction or response that we have to absolutely anything is a result of my understanding. So the intellect, understands, perceives things, and which means my perspective. So, science says that we have 60,000 to 70,000 thoughts per day on an average. And so if there's anxiety and panic, then the number is even, the number increases. And so what we're doing here is, we're not going to sit and change every thought. What we're doing is, majority of the thoughts, what's the perspective behind that thought? What's the understanding? So from understanding, there are thoughts. So, for example, if my understanding is that the car has to be perfect, today my day has to be perfect, and I've got everything planned. And so everything will go according to the plan. And that's my understanding. And so on the basis of this understanding, if there is a slight change, which we know is the only constant, then there is definitely going to be a negative response or a reaction. And so through meditation, we have a very easy approach towards meditation, which means just having the right perspective. Right perspective means that this world is a stage, and all of us are actors. All the actors are playing different characters. And so the actor and the character, are two different things. Yeah. And so if somebody is playing the role of Mr. Universe, so they play the role of Mr. Universe. When they go back home, they go as John, they go as Peter. And so when they interact with their family, he's not going to act like Mr. Universe. He's going to interact as Peter or John. But here what's happening is that because our perspective is one of confusion, because of that, the natural response and reactions are, in that direction. So first thing that, knowledge, or the first clarity that we gain, is that everything in this world, has a beginning and an end. And everything here is constantly changing. Yes. And that's why, the law of the stage is that it's unpredictable things happen here. And so when I'm clear with this, sometimes, what happens is, I was having a chat with someone and they were sharing that I walked into this showroom seeing, big signs of 80% sale, and it was such a big brand. And I walked into it, I got a few items, and I was so happy it's 80%. And then when, they went to the counter to pay, the receptionist, the cashier, said that, do you see that below that, 80% sale, it has one small line which says that only for members. And so, are you a member? And she said, no, I'm not a member. And he said, okay, well, then I have to charge you, the full amount. And the person was so upset, and, we can imagine. And let's see what really happened here, that the instructions were very clear, but we happened to ignore it just because the font was very small. And so even in this world today, which is a stage, there are very clear instructions that everything has a beginning and an end. Everything is going to change at one point in time. And that's why everything's unpredictable. So having this very clear understanding, when things, don't go, in the way that we wanted, there's a natural acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean that I agree with it. If somebody has a different idea on something, I don't agree with it, but there's a natural acceptance that yes, they have a different perspective. Change is the only constant, and this person yesterday they were saying, they were agreeing with me, but today they are not. And so there's acceptance. With this acceptance, what happens is that the turbulence in the mind, that's not happening. There is natural, as you said, natural approach to things is one of, lightness, easiness, no disturbance. And the more, if one starts to live their life in that way, the journey of life becomes one filled with inner treasures, inner richness. The richness of virtues and powers, and in the time of need, I can be able to support, everyone and anyone, because the life, inner life is of, richness, because there's natural acceptance. And so all of my thoughts, because my understanding is clear. So now the 60%, the 60,000 or the 70,000 thoughts, they're going to be in the same vibration, because there's no confusion in understanding. So we're going to work on the main seed, the perspective. What is my perspective in life? I am thinking that she's my friend and she's always going to be my friend. And I miss the small label that life is unpredictable. It's a world stage and unpredictable things happen here. And so today, when my friend betrayed me, I'm so upset and I feel betrayed and I feel ashamed of myself. I feel anger. And that's not a very clever way of living. When we know the instructions beforehand, it's not a very good excuse that I didn't read it, just to pay such a big amount because I didn't read the instruction is not a very clever thing to do. So spirituality, gives us an option to live life in a very clever manner. Clever, by clever, we mean that in a higher consciousness, in the right perspective, right position towards the self, everyone, and the outside circumstances.